you won't need to hear some doctor pontificating it or someone demonizing what you're doing or not doing as being the wrong thing, and these tribal wars within wellness. It will be meaningless. It'll be secondary because you'll know for yourself, I know what works for me.
Hello. This is episode 447. I'm so glad to see you here today. We're going to be talking about metabolic flexibility, how fasting works in all of this. And with the ketogenic diet, if you choose to go as far as combining fasting with keto, we're going to be talking a little bit about hormone imbalances and intuitive eating, eating disorders, shame, stress around eating, how to incorporate like the intermittent fasting between long-term fasting, and really how to structure intuition into fasting. I know that the idea of having no rules around fasting can really be overwhelming, but I would like to prove to you today that it doesn't have to be as regimented as what I see ongoing. When I onboard clients to my one-on-one practice, I ask a lot of questions in my intake form about fasting because I really want to know how these individuals are incorporating it. And the main things that I see in these women is that they're fasting too much, oftentimes way too much, like every day, at least 18 hours, ongoing. And so today's episode is really focused on how do we maintain intuition through this to listen to our body. There are various times within even our cycle as women where fasting, maybe not the best idea to do. So this includes days 11 to 14, where I wouldn't generally recommend doing hardcore fasting. And then again, days 18 to 28, or the last day of bleed, where I wouldn't recommend a ton of lots of fasting. Okay. So if you want to learn more about how to pair your ketogenic diet with hormones and carbohydrates and fasting, I put together a program for that. It's called 6-Week Keto Weight Loss, where I take you through 6 key modules in order to maintain weight loss, like effective weight loss solutions on your ketogenic diet, while also thinking and keeping in mind your hormones. So you can find more by going to healthfulpursuit.com/6week. That's the number 6 and then week. So we're going to also be talking about hunger and habits and how they play a role in figuring out when we should fast and when we should feed. So our guest today is Dr. Will Cole, who's a leading functional medicine expert who consults people around the world via webcam, having started one of the first functional medicine telehealth centers in the world. Named one of the top 50 functional and integrative doctors in the nation, Cole specializes in clinically investigating underlying factors of chronic disease and customizing a functional medicine approach for thyroid issues, autoimmune conditions, hormone imbalances, digestive disorders, and brain problems. He is also the host of the popular The Art of Being Well podcast and best-selling author of Ketotarian, Gut Feelings, The Inflammation Spectrum, and the New York Times bestseller Intuitive Fasting. Let's get into today's episode. Hey, my name is Leanne Vogel. I'm fascinated with helping women navigate how to eat, move, and care for their bodies using a low-carb diet. I'm a small-town holistic nutritionist turned 3-time international best-selling author turned functional medicine practitioner, offering telemedicine services around the globe to women looking to better their health and stop second-guessing themselves. I'm here to teach you how to wade through the wellness noise to get to the good stuff that'll help you achieve your goals. We're supporting your low-carb life beyond the if it fits your macros conversation. Hormones, emotions, relationship to your body, workouts, letdowns, motivation, blood work, detoxing, metabolism. I'm providing the tools to put your motivation into action. Think of it like quality time with your bestie mixed with a little med school so you're empowered at your next doctor visit. Get ready to be challenged and encouraged while you learn about your body and how to care for it better. This is the Keto Diet Podcast.
Hello, Will. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me back. And I was talking about, we do case review meetings in the morning. We have a functional medicine telehealth center. So we consult people online and we go over case reviews, and that us talking today was on the schedule, of course, in between patients. And I said, Leanne and her husband drove all the way down the Florida coast to see me speak in Miami once. And I still think of that to the day, until today, how thoughtful that was and meaningful. It meant so much to me. We had dinner. It was a fun night. Thanks for coming to all those years ago, whenever that was.
Right. When was that even? That had to have been like 2 years ago. And it feels like just yesterday. And it was so great. I really love taking the time to meet other people in the space because we're such a rare breed. Yeah. And when there's an opportunity to connect in person, it's just, I don't know, it creates that bond that you just don't get chatting like this.
Yeah. Very wise. That's very true. And it's been 2 years, I guess, at this point. But anyways, thank you.
Yeah, of course. Anytime. And I would happily do it again. Next time you're at least a 10-hour drive or so away, I would probably make that happen. All
right. I'll take I'll remind you of that down the line when we can all travel again and do that kind of stuff.
Right. Exactly. And that meal was so good. I still dream of that meal. So it was good all around.
Yeah. Plant Miami. Very good food.
Oh, right. Yeah. When we could like hug each other and be in big spaces with humans.
Yeah,
so awesome. Yeah. Those things.
In the before.
Exactly. And okay. So the last 2 years have been a whirlwind for you. When we first saw each other, you had 1 book. Now you have 3.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I mean, obviously my day job, my focus are my patients. So when you talk about these things 10 hours a day for the past 12 years, the books are like a natural outpouring of that, and seeing how to use these amazing tools within wellness, specifically functional medicine, of how to really improve someone's life. So yeah, it's been definitely a whirlwind, but I write these typically long weekends. And 2020, over the course of 2020, I wasn't traveling so much. So it was an opportunity for me to focus on writing. And I normally would write on planes. So Ketotarian and the inflammation spectrum, I wrote a lot of it on planes and in hotels. So on weekends, but for this book, it was like I wrote it at home, predominantly intuitive fasting, because I wasn't traveling over 2020.
Yeah. And so to go from keto to inflammation to fasting, what was that progression like, and why fasting? Why these 3 books in this order? Maybe it was just by chance. Was it planned? Was it not? That's always the question I have.
It's interesting. Yeah. I think in many ways it wasn't planned in the order that it was. These are always topics that I've talked about for the past 12 years. So the topic of a ketogenic diet and using ketosis as a tool to use food as medicine and get the benefits of beta-hydroxybutyrate in your life, becoming fat adapted, becoming metabolically flexible. Ketotarian was my own journey and clinical journey as well, of how to do that, mostly plant-based ketogenic way of eating. Inflammation spectrum was a deep dive in inflammation, and it's interesting that to sort of deeper dive or crescendo of discussing these topics, I mentioned the topic inflammation spectrum in Ketotarian, and I talk about fasting in both of those books. So this is just intuitive fasting was a deep dive into this concept that I feel like when you're talking to so many different people from a functional medicine standpoint, it's very interesting to see this tool be used for good sometimes and used unintentionally and not a good way. And as its name implies, intuitive fasting, I want people to really get to a place and operate and resonate from a place of intuition. And that goes beyond food and fasting and wellness. It's just life itself. And that's really what wellness is, life itself. It's just how you operate through life itself. So I want people to get to and come from a place of intuitive fasting, of using fasting to hear the still small voice of their intuition. But it's really hard when you're metabolically inflexible, when you're inflamed, you have hormonal imbalance, dysregulation of the body. It's really hard to discern between inflammation and intuition, or hormone imbalance and intuition, or hangriness or intuition. I mean, stress, emotional eating is not intuitive eating. So I want people to get to that place, but we can use these tools that to get there. So it's just it's a continuing of the conversation, this book is.
And you just said so many words, like these buzzwords of things, including metabolic balance, hormone regulation. Can we maybe go through a couple of those, maybe starting with the metabolic function and the role that it plays as we either start our ketogenic diet or just on a regular basis?
Totally. So metabolic flexibility is a term that we use to describe the ability to burn fat for fuel and burn sugar for fuel. So it's ability to have the grace and the flexibility to do both. Most people are stuck in sugar burning mode. Most of your audience will know that. And a clean, ketogenic, nutrient dense, whole foods based diet is one way to really gain metabolic flexibility. And many people that are maybe new to this community of being fat adapted or keto adapted, they aren't even then under that umbrella, they aren't fully keto adapted. So this is something that I want people to learn to do it in a sustainable way, in a measured, sustainable way for their life. Because as you and I both advocate, this is a lifestyle. This is not a diet. This isn't a fad crash thing. This is just integrating you feeling great in your life. And that's really the ethos of everything that I do, obviously with patients and what I talk about in the books. But so the analogy that's often used, I think, is really good for people that are trying to depict this in their mind. Sugar burning is like kindling on the fire. It's going to be short-lived. You keep putting kindling on the fire to maintain that energy. You can have cleaner kindling, like a whole foods diet with starches and fruits and smoothies and legumes and all that stuff. That's an option. It's a cleaner kindling. And then you have the dirty kindling of the standard Western diet with refined carbohydrates and junk food and that thing. But they're both kindling nonetheless. The alternative is burning fat for fuel, which is our own fat, if we have any, or using exogenous fat from the foods that we eat and getting our body to a place of ketosis. That's that log on the fire. It's more slow burning. It's going to be sustainable, which is why we see the benefits of a ketogenic diet. Both fasting and the ketogenic diet both increase ketosis. So they're really part of the same lifestyle, because it's a bit of the two sides of the same coin, because the more fat adapted somebody is, the more they will probably just do time restricted feeding, or they'll intermittent fast without even thinking about it. Not because they're willing it or it's this arduous punitive fasting protocol, just because they eat when they're hungry, their blood sugar is more stable because they have that log on the fire. But conversely, the more somebody intermittent fasts, the more they're going to produce ketosis and more they're going to become more fat adapted. So they are very symbiotic in that way, a ketogenic diet and intermittent fasting. But they don't always have to go hand in hand. I mean, most of the studies done on intermittent fasting they don't really change the diet much to see the effectiveness. Will intermittent fasting or time restricted feeding, will that stand on its own merit without changing the diet? And research shows, yes, it does. It has many benefits, which I explore in the book. But I, as a functional medicine practitioner, I'm not going to advocate you to fast your way out of a poor diet. And I think that, and a ketogenic diet, really, because it is symbiotic with fasting, it works so well because it is stabilizing and is very congruent to these mechanisms that we want to tap into.
I've got some thrilling news to share with you. The Bioptimizer's Black Friday mega sale is in full swing. And guess what? It's not just a one-day thing. It's happening throughout the entire month of November. This mega deal is available only to my listeners, only with my code. Yep, you heard that right. It's our little secret. Now, you already know that I have an unwavering trust in Bioptimizers. These guys are the real deal when it comes to improving digestion. And let's not forget their top-of-the-line magnesium. It's truly the best on the market. Plus, they back up their products with a rock-solid 365-day money-back guarantee, no questions asked. Now is that time of year when you fill up your shopping carts and stock up on Bioptimizer's goodness. Trust me when I say this, you will not find a better Black Friday deal anywhere else, not even on the mighty Amazon. The biggest discount you can get and amazing gifts with purchase are available only on my page, buyoptimizers.com/keto diet with the code Keto Diet 10. We all have those never-ending Black Friday wish lists, but this year I challenge you to put your health at the top of that list. Instead of those impulse purchases, let's focus on what really matters. So why wait? Choose your health over unnecessary things this Black Friday. Head on over to buyoptimizers.com/keto diet and enter the code Keto Diet 10 at checkout. Remember, it's buyoptimizers.com/keto diet with the code Keto Diet 10. Don't miss out on this mega deal for my listeners only.
And when it comes to hormones, like you mentioned hormones, and so many of the women listening, the classic high testosterone, low DHEA situation, or the opposite of low progesterone. And they're wondering why they're always hungry, or why when they look at a cracker, they gain 5 pounds. And I would imagine that by not understanding hormones and not supporting our hormones, that this intuitive structure that you're talking about is probably pretty hard, right?
Yeah, it is. Because again, hormone imbalance is not coming from a place of intuitive eating, because what's up is down and down is up. There'll be so much disillusionment and frustration. And that's a lot of my patients that are trying to do the right thing, that hear about these amazing things in wellness. They try to do it, but it's just an uphill battle. It's very arduous. It's very difficult. So these are tools that people can lean into to start to awaken. The term that comes to mind, Paracelsus, he's one of the fathers of modern medicine in late 1400s in Switzerland. We have Hippocrates, right? The Hippocratic Oath, father of modern medicine. But Paracelsus was known as the father of toxicology, or they called him the Martin Luther of medicine, because he was reforming medicine at that time. He called fasting the physician within. And I think that's a really interesting way of thinking about it, of this sort of inner doctor, this physician within, that allows our body to start to heal itself, and tapping into these things that would have been innate and dormant for a long time in our DNA. And it's decreasing this chasm between genetics and epigenetics, as well as allowing your body to actually rebalance and support these pathways that are not optimized, allowing your body to optimize these things, whether that be detox pathways to clear out those excess hormones, whether that's really supporting the gut-brain axis and lowering inflammation levels, which allows the body to shift from this sympathetic fight or flight state to a parasympathetic state, which is resting, digesting, but also hormonally balanced state. So I see these really cool things that allows the body to get its head above water, so to speak, to allow to repair things that were prior to that. Prior to when they were in a state of metabolic inflexibility or metabolic rigidity, all these things seemed impossible. Or they look at the cracker, and you mentioned like gaining the 5 pounds, or they try it at all, gritting their teeth through these punitive diets and starvation and caloric restriction. That's the antithesis of what I want for people. And that's the antithesis of your message and my message too, when it comes to using food and fasting as medicine.
Yes. And there are so many different ways to fast. And so it might be helpful as we move forward, kind of talking about fasting, your approach to fasting, that we really define what that is. Because some people will use fatty coffees and consider it fasting. Others, it's just water. Others, it's dry fasting. There's a billion different ways to do this fasting thing. So I'd love to just preface, like, what are we talking about here?
Yeah. And there is so many ways, and there's so much compelling research around different ways. So I don't think there's a right way or a wrong way per se. It's how you use it in the context of the person that is using it. So that matters. But specifically, what I'm exploring in intuitive fasting is time-restricted feeding. So it's it's not caloric restriction. It's not a fasting like a mimicking diet where you're limiting your calories for a period of time, but it is tapping into time-restricted feeding, which is very strategic times of eating to leverage the benefits and giving your body time to repair and rest. Because eating is wonderful. I mean, there's the yin and the yang with this. There's a time to eat and a time to fast. And I think a time to eating, that's why I paired with intuitive fasting with a ketotarian way of eating. So it's, for many people that have read Ketotarian, this is sort of a continuing of that conversation, and it pairs really well with that way of eating because they are so symbiotic and complementary of themselves, of each other, that I want people to balance their blood sugar, to really lean into these clean keto foods, but in very specific windows. So we start off with bigger eating windows and then shrink them and then expand them back out. So these vacillating time-restricted feeding windows or intermittent fasting windows, depending on how you look at that, they are allowing your body to gain metabolic flexibility. So I think of it as like this proverbial yoga class for your metabolism, where week 1, it's a 4-week plan. That's, again, these are things that I just talked to patients about, but in the book, I'm laying it out in this way, where week 1 is a body reset fast. It's a 12-12 fasting to eating window. So very simple, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. or 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. you're eating. And then you're fasting through the night until you break the fast at breakfast. That's body reset. And I'm pairing that with a ketotarian diet too, because it's mimicking a lot of the same benefits of fasting. It's increasing beta-hydroxybutyrate. You're starting to lean into this fat for fuel, or getting that log on the fire. But it's because it's lowering insulin and lowering blood sugar and kind of calming inflammation levels down. It's, as its name implies, it's resetting the body in many ways. And then because this book, it's intuitive fasting, I want people to be self-paced with this. They don't have to rush and go right into week 2. They can repeat week 1 as many weeks as they need to. And you and I both know this, but when people are reading our books, they're coming at different points of their journey. And if someone's more metabolically inflexible, more metabolically rigid, they may want to just sit there for a while and allow their body to adjust into this new way of eating and this light intermittent fasting window. And then week 2 is a metabolic recharge. We go a bit deeper into about 18-hour fast, 14 to 18-hour fast. But I do that a lot of days where it's a 12 to 6 eating window. I'm eating within those 6 hours, which is an 18-hour fast. You're including the hours that you're sleeping. And we're working on, and I'm highlighting the research in these specific types of time-restricted feeding or intermittent fasting windows. So that week, we're working on more cardiometabolic things, decreasing insulin resistance, decreasing hormonal problems, decreasing inflammation levels, improving lipid markers, all of that stuff. And then week 3 is the deepest fast. It's a 22 to 2 fasting to eating window, 20 to 22. Rather a 4 to 2 hour eating window, depending on how much you're doing it. It's what I refer to as an almost OMAD approach, or OMAD for people that are new to fasting. It's 1 meal a day, or OMAD. And it is the deepest fast for week 3. It's an every other day fast, so it's not every day. And it is the other alternative days, you're back to that 12-12 fasting to eating window. But I want people to start to tap into these deeper ketosis during that week 3 to get the autophagy or cellular recycling benefits, to start to gain even more log on the fire as far as stem cell activation and these longevity benefits that really the researchers are exploring in these deeper fasting windows. And then week 4, it's hormonal rebalance week. So we're putting more kindling on the fire, but in a cleaner kindling sort of way, and do a cyclical ketotarian approach that week, which you mentioned hormones. I mean, depending on what hormones you're talking about and who you're talking about, a lot of people, not everybody, need a little bit more exogenous clean kindling for their hormones. And I want people to experiment with that and learn what their body loves. Some people need less kindling and do better with that. Some people need more kindling. Explore that. This is intuitive fasting. This is not a punitive, set in stone thing. That it's malleable as the human physiology is malleable. And it's unique in the sense that, or I should say it's diverse, like we are all diverse. And so that's things like sweet potatoes, fruits, rice, stuff like that allows to support that thyroid hormone conversion or the progesterone production around your cycle or whatever the case may be. Because these are all tools that are all part of the same thing. It doesn't have to be fasting is bad for women or fasting, everyone should fast. It's like the truth is often sometimes in the middle. And I'm bringing the context to these 4 weeks.
Yes, like nobody could see my face as you were talking. I was like, yes, preach. Yes, bro, you got it. Like, it's so true. And I'll never forget going on stage for KetoCon back in like 2017. And I was sharing that message of like, sometimes you need carbohydrates and not all days are going to look the same on your ketogenic diet. And this is a good thing. And I was so afraid that people were going to throw like butter at me. A lot of people did leave, but it's so great to have authors like you and like brilliant minds sharing this, of that it needs to be diverse, because we all are diverse. And so, yes, thank you so much from all of us, maybe who haven't read it yet, because your book's coming out in a couple days, for creating this, because every little bit counts toward people starting to hear that message. And what I heard from you while you were speaking is not doing the same thing every day, and that this is actually awesome. Would that be a good summary?
Yeah, exactly. Because I called it intuitive fasting for two different reasons. One, calming the noise in your body, calming the inflammation, calming the hormone imbalance in the body allows the noise to calm down. Actually, physiologically, that noise of inflammation and imbalance will calm down so they can actually hear their intuition and that sort of resonant knowingness of what your body loves. But also, I want them to lean actually pretty early on and actually starting to hear that voice of intuition, even when it's not so easy at the beginning, to start knowing, hey, whoa, I feel better on this type of fast. Oh, I feel better with this. I feel better with this. So throughout the whole book, I'm having people check in with their energy, check in with your weight, check in with your digestion, check in with your sleep, check in with your libido, check in with your hair. All of that stuff needs to be looked at, because that's going to be these check engine lights on a personal level to see what you need more of and what you need less of. So we're all unique, and that through leaning into this, there's so many levels of learning about your body that you won't need to hear some doctor pontificating it or someone demonizing what you're doing or not doing as being the wrong thing, and these tribal wars within wellness. It will be meaningless. It'll be secondary, because you'll know for yourself, I know what works for me. And that's what's important.
Empowerment. Yes.
Exactly.
And have that discernment. So when you're sitting in a doctor's office and they say, blah, 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 you can say, no, that's not how my body works. And to have that empowerment is huge. And do you feel like a check engine light would also be a woman's cycle?
Yeah, totally. Because women are higher in kisspeptin levels, which is a signaling molecule that makes them some women more sensitive to fasting or a ketogenic diet. And if you're noticing, hey, look, you can get amazing benefits of ketosis, the anti-inflammatory, the antioxidant pathways, all the stuff we're talking about, right? But it's a balancing act. It's that Goldilocks principle of just right when you need it. And women have that whole other component that is waxing and waning, that's cycling, that people that aren't menstruating don't understand or don't get. And we need to talk about that you're going to need different things depending on where you're at your cycle. So the same thing every day, all day, forever is not going to work for many women there's that delicate ebb and flow of progesterone and estrogen.
Seeds Daily Synbiotic is a broad-spectrum probiotic and prebiotic formulated with 24 clinically and scientifically studied strains for whole body benefits, including gut, skin, and heart health. If you remember a couple of weeks ago, I shared that by taking Seeds Synbiotic DS-01, I have gone to the bathroom every single day. And for somebody who has struggled with constipation, and if you are one of these individuals, it is excruciatingly painful, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. Like you know what I'm talking about if you've experienced this. Seeds Daily Synbiotic is engineered to survive digestion. Their patented capsule-in-capsule via cap technology optimizes viability and delivers a precision release to the colon. No refrigeration required, so you can travel with this thing. I started taking DS-01 in my rotation, and I've continued taking it because it's helped me get a bowel movement every day since January 2023. Here are some of the additional benefits that you could expect from DS-01. It reinforces healthy tight junctions in vitro. It supports healthy gut immune function and responses to occasional GI and environmental stressors. It encourages stability and diversity with the gut microbiota. It supports optimal gut bacteria levels, promotes a healthy microbiota environment in the gut, provides relief from occasional digestive discomfort, bloating, and intermittent constipation. Oh, this stuff. Can't live without it. You can go to seed.com/KDP and use the code KDP to redeem 25% off your first month of Seeds DS-01 Daily Synbiotic. That's seed.com/KDP and use the code KDP.
You were saying, as your body gets quieter and inflammation is decreasing. I would imagine then that over time, your fasting protocol, how you're eating the ketogenic diet will also have to change because your body is healing. And I think a lot of people don't recognize that and they stay on the same protocol. I'm fasting 18 hours every day and I'm eating this and it's going to work. And then they get to a point where nothing's working. Any thoughts on that as you're healing, which is what we're all here to do? What do we do? And what are the sort of signs to look for that it's time to shift?
Yeah, I think that always being conscious of what you're doing and don't be on autopilot or don't think, well, because it worked for back in the day, that it's something that you're a failure or no, that's not the plan, depending on your personality type. It's just to pivot is like a failure. Pivoting is not a failure. Pivoting is part of life, actually. And it's a grace and lightness that maybe that person needs to infuse into their life to realize it's okay. That is life. That is the ripple dynamic nature of humanity, and of which whoever that they're being super punitive for themselves, maybe unintentionally. I think a lot of times they aren't even thinking about it. They're just, no, that's the thing. And like that, I always have to do that. And if I deviate from that, that's not good. Well, check in with your body, see what your body has to say. And, really look at all of these levels. And I adapted from questions that I ask patients. I adapted this quiz in the book. So people kind of have those snapshots of time for themselves. So maybe they don't have labs, so they don't have a functional medicine doctor, they don't have a coach in their life, but they can kind of check in with that quiz to kind of see, hey, where am I at? As the more metabolically flexible you are, you're going to have completely different set of variables as far as your physiology is concerned, where the rules will become antiquated. The rules you used to think you had to do will become, and like you said, that's kind of the point of this anyways. You're supposed to be improving your health. The rules can adjust accordingly.
Yes. And so I also wanted to ask you on intuition, because when people hear that word, like intuitive, they're like, there's no rules, there's no template, I'm going in blind. You're saying, do whatever I want. I can't trust my body. If I trusted my body, I would be at, I don't know, pick a place, McDonald's, eating all the, what did they even serve there? The Happy Meals. I don't know. So like, how do you balance that out? It sounds like your book does a great job at giving those checks and balances in place to teach people how to be intuitive. Can we chat a little bit about that and maybe some behavioral issues that could come up and fears that one has of like free reign? That's what they hear when they hear intuition. Yeah,
no, I totally get that. And that sort of dichotomous, even that title, intuitive fasting, well, it's like, how the heck could not eating be intuitive? Like nobody's going to intuitively fast if they're metabolically inflexible. I get that. That's why the book is called that, because we're using fasting to actually flexible fasting to get metabolically flexible so you can hear your intuition. So I love that you brought up that point, because when you use the word intuition or intuitive eating, right, it is in the social media space. And in certain sects of the wellness world, it can be used very fluffy. And it's like, well, say that to any one of my patients when they first meet me. When their body's in an autoimmune flare, when their body's in hormonal imbalances, when they have insatiable cravings and hangriness, blood sugars all over the place, and they're told, just eat intuitively. So when you crave that donut, like, is that intuition? Well, no, it's cravings masking itself as intuition. So this is really putting in the effort and the intention, and it's a positive effort and positive intention to actually give your body the due diligence to physiologically create a centered and a soundness so you can actually have the proper signaling pathways, like hormonal signaling and neurotransmitter signaling and gut-brain axis signaling, all that stuff we want. You have to actually build the infrastructure to truly hear your intuition when it comes to food, when it comes to rest, when it comes to fasting, all this stuff. So it sounds fluffy, and it can be used in very vapid ways. What I'm talking about is actually quite practical. It's actually truly having proper signaling pathways to know what your body loves and know what your body hates, and have the discernment between the two. So I'm glad you brought that up, because you have to have metabolic flexibility to really have true, full intuition. And that's not to say that women specifically don't just have an innate intuition, even despite the noise of hormonal imbalance and inflammation. But it's despite those things that their intuition's still shouting through that imbalance. What I'm saying is, let's just have a more congruent environment in your life and in your body to hear the intuition more clearly and more stably. So yeah, you have to get there, because metabolic inflexibility is the death of intuition, really. So I want people to get to a place of actually having knowingness when it comes to their health and their body.
And what I'm hearing from you also is that the food quality, a lot of times you see people, I do fasting and this is so good for me. And when I'm eating, I just choose whatever because it balances each other out. But what I'm hearing from you is that this is just part of the overall process of the food quality also matters. And those healthful foods help you get more and more in touch with your intuition. Would that be fair?
Absolutely. Because the food you're eating is going to work in alignment with that, or be an unintentional saboteur of those goals. Every food we eat either feeds inflammation or fights it. There's no innocuous, I'm doing nothing for your physiology food. So if the more a food brings inflammation levels up, disrupts the microbiome, right, impacts your blood sugar, that's going to raise the noise up in the body. So you can't even discern what do I need? Like how can I make sense of all of these things? Because every meal and every snack is like a confusing experience. So yeah, it's definitely true. Your food is either doing one or the other. We're all different. So there's bioindividuality there. And also too, it's not just the macronutrients that can be stabilizing these things. It's the micronutrients too. It's the minerals, the vitamins, the polyphenols, all of these things too will be the raw materials for healing your body.
Beautiful. And as you were speaking, I kind of thought of, there are a couple of women, shout out to them, that I get messages from. And do you know when you work with a client and they feel completely helpless and inflammation is at an all-time high, their hormones are all over the place, they're hungry all the time, they can't get a handle on things. What I really like about your work is that it's sort of like you meet them where they are. And so what I really want people to take away from this conversation is that the work that you do, just like you said, people are starting at different paths. But I think sometimes books in the health and wellness space can start way off in right field, and somebody feels like there's no way that I can do this. It's not approachable. I feel completely helpless and it's too far of a leap. Would you say that for somebody like that your book could be helpful and that you meet them where they are with all of the things happening?
Certainly. No. And when, like you said, when you work with people all day long and that's your main focus, you've heard just about every scenario you can think of on like where people could be at, what's their headspace, what are their frequently asked questions, like what are the unintentional excuses for why they shouldn't do it, what are the legitimate excuses for why they shouldn't do it, or legitimate reasons why they can't do it. I try to walk them through that hand in hand, like these are the things that you're thinking about. And even when it's just as a matter of, like I mentioned, like that week 1 or week 2 and whatever one of those 4 weeks, you may want to repeat those things, and that's okay. Just because I'm saying these are 4 weeks, it may be needed much longer than that. Or it's cycling through these 4 weeks as many times as you need to. That is called life. These are tools that you can repeat as many times as you need to until you get to where you need to be. And you can check in with that metabolic flexibility quiz to kind of see, hey, subjectively based on this quiz data, how am I improving my health? And you'll know because these are how you feel too, but you can quantify it.
I'm just starting to open up that dialogue. I can't tell you how many times I work with a client and they're like, what? Like I could just, track my symptoms and understand. I'm like, start a dialogue with your body. And this is like a mind-blowing process. It's quite easy. It's just people don't think of it.
No, they don't. Because we are in many ways divorced from that knowingness about the body or intuition or just checking in with themselves. They just think that, we say a lot, but it's true. Just because something's common doesn't necessarily mean it's normal. Like ubiquity doesn't necessarily equate with normalcy. Your everyday things you settle for or just push through or ignore doesn't necessarily mean you should be pushing through or just settling or ignoring it. Because these things, like we talked about, energy levels, like how is your energy levels? Are you getting that afternoon crash? Are you having trouble falling asleep or staying asleep? how's your, like all this stuff we're talking about. It's really good. It's really good for people to start to have that, whoa, I thought that was normal, but it actually isn't normal. And actually they can start to appreciate these things that are starting to improve as the body finds that balance again.
Yes, completely. So shifting gears a little bit into, is this for everyone? Is fasting for everyone? Are there certain people that should or shouldn't, or maybe stay on week one, or just, a conversation around, is this for everyone?
Yeah. Is it for everybody? Well, it's how you do it. I think how you do it is for everybody, because everybody's like, week one, that 12-12 body reset fast, it's a very light time restricted feeding. So I think that most people could benefit from that. I can't think of a person that couldn't, because eating between 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. until you're full, eat when you're hungry, eat until you're satiated, eating nutrient-dense healing foods, allowing your body to fast through the night until it breaks the fast in the morning. I think that that's a sensible approach for people. And what I want people to do as they cycle through the 4 weeks and maybe cycle through it a couple times, they can say, oh, I feel better at this type of fast, and I didn't really like that one so much. And they can intuitively readjust this protocol to suit their bio-individuality. So yeah, to varying degrees, these are all things that I want people to sample and lean in and figure out, start to learn about their body and what they need more of and what they need less of. But even the deepest fasts, they're not forever. So these are just limited experiences to learn about your body and to gain some metabolic flexibility and tap into these benefits that we're talking about. So none of them are always and forever. So you're ebbing and flowing and going in and out of these levels of ketosis. So these temporal vacillating windows, I think, are good for most human beings. It doesn't mean it's going to be super comfortable. If someone's super metabolically rigid and they're like, whoa, this fasting's tough, and then naturally say, well, this isn't for me. Fasting's not for me. That's like someone going to the gym and being sore after their workout and saying, the gym's not for me. Moving my body's not for me. Sometimes when you have a very tight, rigid metabolism, you're going to get a workout for a little bit. And that soreness, so to speak, whatever that is, like a little bit more fatigue or a little bit more like, oh my gosh, I'm hungry, a little bit more blood sugar adjusting or a little physiology adjusting to these changes. That's that proverbial yoga class that I mentioned. A hot yoga class is tough, and you have to lean into it and be progressive and be gentle with yourself, but gentle, but still progressive. And it's that balancing act of moving the needle, but don't move the needle too fast too soon. So I think that context matters. The one caveat I would say are people that have disordered eating, people that need to figure out a way that works for themselves that aren't going to trigger them. There are many people with past disordered eating that do really well with time restricted feeding and fasting because they're eating amply. Because just to repeat this again, intermittent fasting, doing it the way that we advocate it, that you and I advocate it, is that this is not chronic caloric restriction. This is the antithesis of chronic caloric restriction. So you're just being strategic about when you're eating the food, but you're eating ample amounts of food. So, but with that said, even those tighter fasting windows, even if you're eating ample amounts of food, I would say talk to your doctor, talk to your eating disorder specialist, or both, and they may give the okay because they see how nutrient dense it is in healing. And for some people, maybe it's not the right time for them, and they need to do more healing as far as their relationship with food and relationship with their body, because this should not be an eating disorder disguised as a wellness practice. This is not what we're talking about here. But other than those people, I think that this is a very measured approach for people to try.
Yeah, completely. And I'm really happy that you mentioned eating disorders as somebody who struggled with an eating disorder for 20 years. When I started the ketogenic diet and I started fasting, it definitely triggered because I was looking at it with restriction and trying to limit my calories. And there was actually about 4 years in my ketogenic experience where I did not fast. There were no rules. There was no, if I was hungry, I ate. If I wasn't, I didn't track my eating. And only after really the last year, I've really gotten into fasting. Now being recovered for 4 years, I feel pretty good about it, but you always have to check yourself, check your heart, check where your mind is at. And that's such great advice, and to speak with a professional and get the okay, but then know you have the responsibility, like check your heart daily. I was supposed to do a 24-hour fast now into 7 p.m. and I just woke up. I'm like, nope, it's not going to happen today. I'm not feeling it. I can't do it. And that's far more high priority. My mental health, way higher priority than sticking to a plan and saying, no, I planned a 24-hour fast. I have to do it. No.
Yeah. And that's intuition saying, no, I'm okay with that. I need to eat, and that's okay. This should not be punishing somebody or you feeling like a failure, because this is just, we are trying to integrate feeling great in your life. This isn't about feeling like a failure. That's not the point of this. If you're feeling shame and stress, you're never going to stress your way into wellness. It's really going to be the opposite. It's going to be such a source of dread if you stick with it, or you're probably not going to stick with it because it is such a source of shame and dread. So it's going to be unsustainable, and that's not good either.
Mm-hmm. And to really, for anyone, oftentimes people hear eating disorder and they're like, well, I don't have that. I don't need to listen to this. And I think the big thing here is most of us have some sort of disordered relationship to food. If you've been on any diet, it's probably likely.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and orthorexia, which I'm sure this is a stress shame around healthy eating. I think in our community, it exists on a spectrum too. And for some legitimate reasons, with the amount of flares and autoimmune problems that people have around foods, that can trigger trauma around foods and orthorexia. But there's a lot of people that are going in with good intentions, but it becomes this very restrictive, very punitive thing, which is not coming from a place of intuition.
Yes. And this is why I love your work, because you say stuff like that and we just align so much in how we approach things. And again, I just appreciate you so much creating this book, sharing it with the world. Can you tell us where people can interact with you, get the book, what the deal is? Just lay it all on us.
Everything's at drwillcole.com. That's drwillcole.com. But they can order intuitive fasting from there, the links to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Target, all that stuff. But there's a lot of free content there to learn about themselves and see if functional medicine's right for them too.
Amazing. And I'm going to include a link to your book that launches in just a couple of days so people can grab that. And just thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for listening. Join us next Tuesday for another episode of the Keto Diet Podcast. Looking for more resources? Go to healthfulpursuit.com for keto meal plans, weight loss programs, low-carb recipes, and oodles of free resources to get you going. The Keto Diet Podcast, including show notes and links, provides information in respect to healthy living, recipes, nutrition, and diet, and is intended for informational purposes only. The information provided is not a substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment, nor is it to be construed as such. We cannot guarantee that the information provided on the Keto Diet Podcast reflects the most up-to-date medical research. Information is provided without any representation or warranties of any kind. Please consult a qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding your health and nutrition program.